Alright, so with this video, I'm going to be going over a custom card archetype thing I created, and then go over a few choice ones which were sent in to me on Twitter. But first off, we're going to go over the ones I made. The ones I did, I wanted to take the card Snake Rain, which is a spell that exists in the game, which has the effect to discard one card to send 4 reptile-type monsters from your deck to the graveyard. And this effect is really good. Or, it would be if there were any good reptile-type monsters to send to the graveyard, and that's why no one really uses it. It has, the potential to be broken, but there's no cards to use with it that make it broken. Kind of like how Super Regeneration, that one dragon card, it was never used until Dragon Rulers were put into the game. So the cards I made try to make Snake Rain broken. So it's 4 monsters, because it sends 4 reptile-type monsters. Each one is modeled after a monster that exists in game and has a graveyard effect. And all 4 of them share a distinction where they all have an effect when they're sent to the graveyard. They all have an effect that can activate while they exist in the graveyard. And they all have an effect on the field. So first up, we'll have TREEBORN GIGOBYTE. And they're all based on GIGOBYTE, since he's a level 1 reptile-type monster that I'm fond of. Because he's in all the card artwork of the Law of the Normal stuff. So, this card's effect, when it's sent to the graveyard, is to allow you to draw 1 card on a hard once per turn. So, great effect right off the bat. Its second effect is, while it exists in the graveyard, during your standby phase, you can special summon this card, and then you discard 1 card. So, very similar to TREEBORN Frog's effect. And then its on-field effect is, you contribute a reptile monster to special summon a reptile monster from your graveyard, except this card. Basically a way to special summon another reptile-type monster from your graveyard, since Snake Rain is sending a whole bunch of reptiles to the graveyard. And also a way to forcefully activate its sent to the graveyard effect again, if you decide to tribute himself to draw another card. So lots of advantage. I think this card is suitably broken enough, but I don't think I made him too over the top. So let's go into the next one. Next we have GIGOBYTE Shell. This one's effect, when it's sent to the graveyard, is to add a reptile from your graveyard to your hand at the end of the turn. That way you get some advantage, but, not immediately. So you can't keep sending them to the graveyard. Its in-graveyard effect is just like Volcanic Shell, in that you pay 500 life points to add a GIGOBYTE card from your deck to your hand. So it can search out the other cards in this archetype. And its last effect is one where if it's banished from the graveyard, you can special summon it. And all of its effects can only be used once per turn, and a hard once per turn. So no abusing any of them, no sending multiple GIGOBYTE shells to get multiple searches like you can do with Volcanic Shell. But then again, this card has more effects than Volcanic Shells. So by that metric, it's already a lot better. And I also just gave it the Giant Rex effect, where it can summon itself when it's banished because of this next card. GIGOBYTE Lakeside Risen. This card's effect is when it's sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it. Its graveyard effect is just like Laval Lakeside Lady. I'll have all the cards these ones are based on screen so you can see them. But basically, its graveyard effect is you can banish itself and another reptile-type monster to destroy a card on the field. That way, you can use the reptiles in your graveyard in order to affect the field in some way. And its on-field effect is a quick effect where you contribute this card to special summon a GIGOBYTE the Risen from your extra deck. And it's treated as an Exceed summon. And that's why he's in GIGOBYTE the Risen's armor, in the artwork. This was when I was making the whole thing, I thought, there's no real beating power with this deck, besides the massive amounts of link plays that you can do with the advantage this archetype generates. So I made this card as a way for them to get some kind of beat stick on the field. Because that's exactly what GIGOBYTE the Risen is. He's just, a near 3,000 attack beat stick with no effect. And since it is an Exceed summon, it does clog up your extra zone unless you have link monsters out anyway. On to the next one. Next one, GIGOBYTE WILDWIND. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a monster from your hand. So, like a Firewall Dragon effect. It's also not a once per turn either. You know, just like Firewall Dragon. This one can't be abused though, unlike Firewall Dragon. Its graveyard effect is you can banish this card from the graveyard to add a reptile monster from your deck to your hand, and then discard one card. Since I thought just to full-on search anything from your deck from the graveyard effect was too good in this deck, I added the discard effect as well to balance it out and as a way to cycle more reptiles in the graveyard. And also, you know, it's not a once per turn. Otherwise, I would have had to have made a once per turn without the discard effect. And its on-field effect is if your opponent activates a card or effect, you can tribute this card in response to it to banish a card on the field. And I modeled this on-field effect after this trap card called Chain Hole, which has an effect that can only be activated in response to an opponent's effect. Because I thought that was a good way to balance out a strong effect like a quick play, banish anything on the field, and also send it to the graveyard to activate its graveyard effects. It also has the highest attack of all of them, and that's because they all only have like 50 more attack than the monster they're based on. And the monster this guy's based on just happened to have 1700 attack. So him being the strongest is just kind of a homage to the card it's based on. And then finally, they have a field spell card that I made as a way to kind of set all this stuff up. The field spell card is called GIGOBYTE Human Wave Tactics. I think it gives a little bit too much advantage, but we'll let you know. So basically, its first effect is you can send a reptile-type monster from your hand or deck to the graveyard to search out a snake rain. Its on-field effect is supposed to be kind of like a supply squad for reptiles, except if a reptile monster you control is just sent to the graveyard, no matter how it's sent there, as long as it's from the field, you get to draw a card, but you have to send a reptile-type monster from your deck to the graveyard to draw that card, which, you know, is just pure advantage with all of these graveyard reptile effects. And its last effect is if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle all of your banished cards into your deck to add a GIGOBYTE card from your deck to your hand. So as a way to kind of recycle the cards that might be banished due to Lakeside's effect. And also this card can choose to destroy itself when it activates its first effect to search. You know, if you want to forcefully reset your banished pile for some reason. I tried my best to balance this one out, but, you know, I was also trying to make it strong as well. So that's the whole archetype. They're all based on cards that exist. If I remembered in my editing, I should have them on screen next to the card when I was talking about it. They were a lot of fun to make. It was really hard thinking of good graveyard effects that weren't super generic or just completely broken, because like my first thought was to give them all a draw one effect when being sent to the graveyard, which would be really good, but that's also really boring. So I just restricted it to one of them, and I eventually just decided to copy graveyard effects that exist, and that's how they all kind of got their artwork. Also, you may have noticed the artwork, it's all custom. I work with an artist on my World of Warcraft channel for a couple of series I do over there. And I basically just said, hey, do you want to draw some Yu-Gi-Oh cards for me for this custom archetype thing? And she was like, sure. So I gave her like notes on how to do it. She doesn't play Yu-Gi-Oh, and she gave them to me in a couple of days. They look great. So, you know, I paid her for that too. She doesn't do any art for free. But, you know, I'll have her info or DeviantArt in the video description if you want to check out her art on other stuff. Now, with that done, my super broken Snake Rain archetype, I'm going to go into user-submitted ones. Now, I only chose 3 people. That's because I don't want this video to be super long. And I should mention, I got a ton of submissions. My submission was really open this time around. It was just send me 5 cards that support an archetype or are your own original archetype. And I got a lot of submissions, and I also gave you guys a little caveat that if you send me a thing, you know, there's no guarantee I'm going to feature them in this video. So I'm just, you know, letting you know, if I didn't pick yours, it's nothing personal. I just picked these ones because I like them for one reason or another. And also, some people sent me, like 20 long card archetypes. I specifically only looked for ones that were 5 or less. If it had 6 or 7, it was disqualified. That's too much. So, that being the case, this first guy, he didn't really send me an archetype. He just sent me a series of, weird cards that I thought were kind of interesting. So, I'm going to go over them. This first one right here is called Witch of Black Magic. Its effects are, it can't be special summoned, and once per turn, quick effect, you can activate a normal spell card from your hand. And I thought this was just such a simple, unique card. I think it's properly balanced, kind of, in the way that it can't be special summoned, but also it's not a hard once per turn, so if you had multiple copies, you could use multiple normal spells from your hand, but also, you're using the cards from your hand, so you're still going -1 to use their effect. But this makes me think, which normal spell card would be broken if you could use it from your hand during your opponent's turn? Which has really got me thinking. My first thought was, Raigeki, you could blow up their field during your opponent's turn. That would be great. But I'm trying to... It also made me think, what other normal spell cards would be broken because of this card that currently, no one uses. And I just, the fact that it made me think of that, I think makes this a really good custom card. All right, and this next one is a Gladiator Beast field spell card, surprisingly. So let's go over the effect. When the effect of a face-up Gladiator Beast monster activates, you can draw a card. And if that card is a Gladiator card, special summon a Gladiator monster with a different name from your deck, and activate its effect. You can only activate the effect of Gladiator's turning ground once per turn. So, in my last custom card video, someone sent me some Gladiator Beast support cards, which included a Gladiator Beast field spell card. And I remember giving that field spell card kind of a bad grade, because it just didn't really do enough to solve the problem with Gladiator Beasts. And I think this field spell card kind of, helps Gladiator Beasts in a way I didn't think. Because first of all, if you just change the name of this card to Gladiator Beasts Training Ground, then, I think the Gladiator Beasts would gain their effects if they were special summoned from the deck with this card. I think that's how it works. But this, the card, it's not worded the best, but, you get the gist of it. So, one of the problems with Gladiator Beasts is they need to attack and survive the battle in order to gain their effects. And they basically gain all of their effects, after they've already attacked. And the time in which you want to use your effects is before you attack. So with this card, if a Gladiator Beast succeeds in attacking and activate its effects, you get to draw a card. And if you draw a Gladiator Beast card, you get another Gladiator Beast out on the field, which will then activate its effect because it's treated as if it was special summoned by a Gladiator Beast card. This card very rewards you for actually using a Gladiator Beast effect, because you get to draw a card, and then you have a potential to just get another monster on the field. So you go +2 off of this effect, which is a really good motivator for using all your other cards to make sure those attacks go through. Because that's kind of one of the problems with Gladiator Beasts, is they require so many other cards to supplement them being able to actually survive the battle. And just giving yourself a whole bunch of advantage if you are able to survive that battle, I think really helps. It's such a simple concept that I didn't even think of. And a card like this, that would probably be enough to help Gladiator Beasts be a little bit playable. So I like this card. This next one, these are all by the same guy. He just sent me random cards that weren't really connected to each other. Some of them were, though. I'm not going to go over those ones, though. Because I don't want this video to be super long. So this next one is called Unlock Your Potential. Basically, target one face-up monster you control that has a once per turn effect, and has already activated its effect this turn. This card's effect becomes that monster's effect, and then you banish this card instead of sending it to the graveyard. Another one, which is a really simple effect, but opens up so many different possibilities of just thinking. Which effect that a monster uses that's only once per turn would be broken if you could use it twice. That's basically what this card does. It's probably not worded the best, but I get the gist of what it's saying, so that's all that really matters. if this was an actual official card, there'd be ruling nightmares with how it's worded. But basically what the card does is allows you to use another effect that a monster you've used previously had already used, and that is, a once per turn. So this would allow you to use hard once per turns a second time that turn. And I'm trying to think, what would be the best card for this? I don't know, maybe one that, completely blows up your opponent's field and has a really hard, activation requirement. I can't think of any off the top of my head. If you guys can think of a good one, this card, a lot of the cards it gave, they all have, such simple effects, but they open up so many possibilities. I like that. These are very creative. Simply creative. Okay, these next two ones, not really in the same vein as the other ones. Let's just go over this one. This is the Forbidden Realms cards. So let's just read it. It's Wolf Officer of the Forbidden Realms. If your opponent has special summoned a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. And your opponent cannot attack any other face-up monsters except this one. Neither player can special summon more than one monster per turn. Even if this card is removed from the field, the effects remain until the end of the turn. So basically, you can special summon this card from your hand if your opponent special summons a monster from their hand, and then the effect is applied where your opponent can only special summon one monster. So it locks them out of special summoning for the rest of the turn, which is a great floodgate, especially since it has decent stats too. So your opponent they only have their normal summon left to try to get over this card. And even if they do get over it, they can still only special summon that one turn. So, this is a great floodgate. Next one. All of these cards are basically like floodgates. I should just, spoiler alert. All right, so this next card can special summon itself if your opponent mills a card from their deck or sends a card from their hand to the graveyard. So another thing that happens pretty often. And this card's effect basically gives all of your opponents searching for the turn the Errata Sangan effect, where if they add the card to their hand, they can't use it that turn. And it has another effect where this effect applies until the end of the turn. So, it's another floodgate that completely stops searching, but without actually stopping them. Because the guy, he had he had notes on these cards, and he's like, it's just a reverse, Sangan effect. And I was like, oh, that would be a good effect to apply to your opponent. It doesn't stop the searching, but, they're not using those cards that turn in any way, any meaningful way. So it delays them without actually completely stopping them. Alright, and this next card, Rabbit Officer of the Forbidden Realms, it's basically like Droll and Lockbird. If your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand, you can special summon this card, and then your opponent can only add one card from their deck to their hand per turn. And if you special summoned it, then, that would be it for the rest of the turn. But instead of sending the card to the graveyard, you get a monster on the field. And this effect applies to the end of the turn. So, Droll and Lockbird. Alright, this next one is a trap card, Emergency Call to the Forbidden Realms. This one is also technically a hand trap, where if your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand, you can activate this card, which will allow you to add 2 of your Forbidden Realm cards from your deck to your hand. So it's a searcher that is reliant on your opponent searching out cards, which makes it not as good as the other ones. I mean, it's a strong effect and everything, but that goes into, specific counter card territory, which only gives you advantage. It doesn't actually stop your opponent. But then again, the other cards, all the other cards as archetype do stop your opponent. But also, why is this a trap card? It could just have been a monster with the effect and how it's worded. Since you can use it from your hand anyway. Alright, in this next one, Police Raid of the Forbidden Realms. If your opponent summons a monster which cannot be targeted by card effects, you can send one of your Forbidden Realms monsters from your, basically anywhere, to the graveyard to negate the summon and then banish the card face down. It's like a very specific solemn warning. Except this one's a little bit more specific. It also allows you to mill one of the Forbidden One realms, but, as far as I remember, none of them have graveyard effects, so I don't know how that would be super helpful. The first 3 were good floodgates. The trap cards, not so much. They're okay. But there's cards that exist that do what they do, but better. Okay, and this next archetype, is a joke archetype. I thought it was funny though. So I'm sorry for like using up my limited space in this video for a joke archetype. It was really funny. So this first one is Fat Naruto. It's a warrior effect monster. Here's the thing with a lot of these joke cards, they all have really bad, problem solving card text. Which reminds me, like for my cards, the ones I made, I thought I did a good job with them, working out their effects and everything. And then I went to like double check on Hard Lake Joe's server. It's like one of the most active and friendly Yu-Gi-Oh servers I'm part of. I was like, hey, can you guys check these to make sure, the problem solving card text is correct? And there were so many mistakes. They basically just rewrote the effects for me. I was like, oh, damn. I thought I did a good job, but no, you're right. There was a lot of, mistakes in these things. So even though, I make Yu-Gi-Oh videos for a living and everything, I still made a whole bunch of mistakes when I was making my custom cards. So you can't really blame them for that. But that being said, joke cards, there's no reason for their effects to be so poorly worded. It would be funnier if their effects were more legit, but that not to take away from these ones. Not really something to talk about on Fat Naruto. Anyways, cannot be destroyed by battle. Once per turn, you can gain 1,000 life points. All right, so decent protection. Cannot be destroyed by battle. Not half bad, I guess. It has pretty bad stats for that, but, whatever. And also, once per turn, you just gain 1,000 life points. Can you say a row mage support? Anyone? Okay, next one is Naruto's Boyfriend. It's a fire warrior tuner monster with 1900 attack. Those are pretty good stats for a tuner monster. Cannot be destroyed by battle. Just like Fat Naruto. I'm not sure why this one can't be destroyed by battle, but the fact that it's a tuner monster that can't be destroyed by battle, that actually makes them not half bad. Also, it has another effect where once per turn, if this card is used for a Naruto synchro summon, draw one card. Mind you, this is not a hard once per turn, so if you're able to reuse this effect, you can draw a lot of cards, I guess. Alright, let's go into this next one, which is the Synchro Monster, Ultimate Naruto Kiss. It's a... what is the stars on this? 1-7. Okay, so Fat Naruto and Naruto's Boyfriend. If you use both of them, you can make this card. Or I'd assume, because it doesn't actually have its requirements in the card text. Anyways, it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's cards. Pay 600 life points to special summon a Naruto from your graveyard. A Naruto monster. Okay. I misread that. So this card just cannot be destroyed by your opponent's cards. Since it doesn't specify which ones, he's just immune to everything that can destroy it. Including battle, I'd assume, because it doesn't specify card effects, just cards. And your opponent's destroying them by battle counts as cards. And just special summon Naruto monster from your graveyard by paying 600 life points. It's not a once per turn. This card, it would be broken if you could bring it out, because it doesn't seem like there's a way to actually bring this card out. I'd assume he meant to put generic materials on it, but you don't know. Okay, next one is Team Naruto. This is like a level 10 monster for some reason. You can special summon this card from your hand by send 3 Naruto monsters from your side of the field to the graveyard. Okay, so you can special summon this card from your hand. That's a pretty tough requirement though. Especially since it seems like the Naruto cards don't really have any swarming capabilities. Cannot be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects. You see, this one specifies card effects instead of just cards, so it can be destroyed by battle at least. And when this card destroys a monster by battle, add a Naruto card from your deck to your hand. Hey, pretty decent summoning condition if there was more swarm Naruto cards. Decent protection and a decent +1 on destroying cards by battle. Not all that great, but not half bad for, a joke card. And last up, we have Sad Naruto. Once per turn, if this card is special summoned from the graveyard, draw one card. Okay, so this card, decent effect. You know, it's kind of like a sacred crane or a molten zombie. Draw a card when it's special summoned from the graveyard. And there's also an archetype specific card which would allow you to special summon it from the graveyard if you could actually bring that card out, which you can't really, unless you like cheese its summoning requirements, I guess. But yeah, this is I just thought that was funny. Okay, and that's it for custom archetype reviews. What did you think of the ones I reviewed? Don't get mad if I didn't choose yours. If you want to send in more for me to review, I'll have my Twitter in the video description, which you can send me your custom cards to if you want. And for this next one, you know, we'll have a theme for it. We're not going to have it open to just anything. And I kind of like the theme of cards which support a current archetype. Although, how about custom cards which support a specific card that would make it broken? Kind of like how I created, you know, all of those GIGOBYTE cards to make Snake Rain broken. Try to make, you know, 5 cards centered around one card that exists, which, if they existed, would make that card broken. That seems like it would be fun to read over. Alright, so again, thanks to Rachel for doing the drawings for my thing, and also Hard Leg Joe's Discord server for reading over my cards and making sure they had proper problem-solving card text. I'll have a link to an album of the cards in the video description if you want to look at them for whatever reason or to make fun of them. Whatever. Until next time.